name's Laurie Langridge. I am 63. My first surfboard, I can remember, must have been told my father that I wanted to try surfing, and I think it was one of his workmates had a surfboard up Manu Hill, so we went up there and we bought a surfboard. But to me it looked fantastic, but it was a homemade board. It was pretty big, pretty heavy, probably had about 3 coats of fiberglass and resin on it, but it was good to learn on because it had plenty of volume and you could catch a wave easy, but I've got no idea what make it was. I first started surfing when I was probably 16. My neighbour next door, whose name was Murray Jack, he bought a brand new surfboard and we all shot out to Waipu Cove to have a go at surfing. I was a pretty keen skateboarder at that. I was a runner, and so I was into roller skates and things that they used to have at the AMP Hall in Wongarei. So I played rugby, so I was into any sport. I was there, and I remember Murray Jack bought this, I'm pretty sure it was a Dunlop surfboard. We all shot out to Waipu Cove. It wasn't a bad day, and Murray went out first and tried to stand up, couldn't stand up. Might have been Max Atkins, might have been there. We all tried to stand up on this board and no one could stand up. It was so slippery. And anyway, we're sitting on the beach all a bit disheartened about not being able to surf, and we saw this guy rubbing something on his board, and one of us went up and had a bit of a chat. And we said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, man, you've got to have wax on your board, otherwise you fall off," which we did. So he gave us a bit of wax, and we just never looked back. Like everyone sort of stood up, might have been just in the white water, but we all stood up that day, and so we had a good time. So I think everyone, Waipu Cove, and I'm talking about 1965, 64, a lot of the guys that were in the lifesaving club were actually surfers. A lot of them had the old wooden hollow ply ones that they'd made or got boat builder friends to build, and that's where a lot of people started surfing. That's probably why I started surfing, because just my neighbour had a surfboard, and that's why I started. Waipu Cove, I started, yeah.
Oh, that's one.
Tarihi Surf Club. I didn't, Barry Chappelle and a few of the guys, Ross Edge, Tui Wordley and Chris Fraserhurst, it must have been talking about starting the club, and they had the first meeting at Barry's house, but the first public meeting was at the AMP Hall, and I was there was quite a bunch of us, and that's where it first started. We just started all hanging out together, and there was quite a big team of surfers in Wongarei at that stage. It was just growing. Surfing was just taken off. I don't know why. It was just something that was new, and we were starting to get a few like boards that were pretty good, pop-out boards, a lot of them, but you know, most people could catch a wave and stand up, so the club was pretty big. I remember the Tarihi Club first club championship, I think that was 1966. It was a foggy morning. We'd come all the way from Pātea, we'd been staying out there, and we had our club championships, and it was all over in a day, and I managed to win the junior in that first championship. So that was a bit of a buzz for me. There was only 4 of us in it, but one of them was John Bromfield, and sadly he's passed away a few years ago, but he was a very good surfer, and I can remember him in those days. The lifesavers lifesaving clubs were pretty anti-surfers in some way, especially when they surfed between the flags, and you've got to imagine this is a competition, and poor old John got this lovely ride and went right in between the flags, and as the whitewater sort of closed out, he fell off his board, and the lifesaving guys rushed down and grabbed his board, and they wouldn't give it back to him. And lucky for me, it took about 10 minutes for him to get his surfboard after arguing and carrying on. So I managed to get a few waves, but he wasn't really competing for half the heat, so that was pretty good, lucky for me. We never had wetsuits in those days, and we just surfed right through winter. An old jersey or something like that was the best you could do. My dad was a bit of a diver, and I did try his wetsuit out, but it was a diving wetsuit, and it was too big for me, too thick. You felt like you were wearing 20 layers of clothing. It was just terrible, but that's how it was. So you just toughened up, and we were lucky at Sandy Bay that Mrs. Pullman had a lovely caravan there that had hot food, so you'd go and have a surf and go and get some spring rolls or a pie or something and warmed up and sat in your car for a while, and then you're back into it again. So that was fun. Best board, probably the one I've got now. I've had lots of boards. I've got a few in my roof of my garage. At the moment, don't laugh, I ride a 10-3. I can still crank it around pretty good and get on the nose, and I just have a lot of fun with it. So it's a Roger Hall, sort of a hybrid type thing, but especially made for me. So it is a great board, and I've had it for about 5 years, and it's still going strong. Best rides. I remember I was probably only about 16 or 17, and a group of us went up to Shippies. It must have been a long weekend, and we were lucky enough we got some photos of that weekend just the other day off Bill and Laurie in Durham, so I didn't even know they existed. But we got up Shippies. I think we went there at night time, probably a Friday night, and you could hear the surf pounding away. The next day we got up, and there was these lovely, I was 6 feet, so it was way over my head, but the rides were just fantastic. I got some no leg ropes, and we were just in Shippies in the bay there at Ahipara, and but unfortunately I lost my board on one of the rides and managed to I actually hailed Murray Jack and said, "Mate, I've lost my board," and I was a good swimmer, but I was about 300 or 400 yards out from the beach. So we decided he'd paddle me in, and two of us on his board, and we got in. But by that time we'd moved quite a way up the beach, and there was a whole lot of rocks looming. So we parted company. Murray actually ran across the rocks. He got his feet cut, but I sort of got slid along on my side. So I had lost a lot of skin on the side of my legs, and Bill Durham had a photo of me laying in a tent at Shippies, and you can see I've got quite a scarred leg, so that was a good day, and it was a good surf, but I've got a bit sad memories about it. So surf heroes, probably my two kids were my surf heroes. I was lucky my son started surfing when he was at primary school. He had a few Albie Haag and was one of his friends, and the Thompson boys, they were all keen on surfing, and they were lucky that Haags had a batch at Partau. So he started surfing, and I was right back into it then, and our daughter Christy, she used to surf with it. So I just feel like, and they were my heroes, but Tui Wordley was probably up this way. He was, and Ross Edge they were a bit older than me, and they were really good surfers. They'd been to like the New Zealand champs, and they were very, very good. Tui would take his dog on, he could do spinners, handstands and stuff like that. So they were a joy to watch for us. My first car was a Morris Minor. It was pretty useless, didn't go very fast, but man, it took me lots of miles. You'd think nothing of being at Ocean Beach or Waipu Cove. The surf wasn't very good, and someone say, "Oh, Shippies will be alright." So you'd take off, but you didn't think about it. I think petrol was a lot cheaper. you get 3 or 4 guys in, they'd chip in a few bucks each and away you'd go. So we just had a lot of fun, and I think mine was about the slowest car around, but I learned to drive it pretty good. Surf accidents, probably the one that I mentioned at Shippies was my worst one. I've seen a few, but I've been pretty lucky. I was surfing at Ocean Beach. I'd taken the 2 children down, and I think it might have been the Thompson boys as well. There's a group of us who were at Ocean Beach one evening, and it was really nice surf and getting some good rides. And I hear my daughter yell out, "Dad, can you have a look?" And so I paddled over, and she'd come off her board, and I was pretty sure she was just riding a single fin board then, but the fin had come down and gone right into the muscle of her leg, and it was quite a nasty cut. So I thought, "Oh no," I said. So we had to pack up, and the kids weren't too impressed about 10-15 minutes in the surf, and you had to pack up and go to the doctors. And Christy was pretty brave, and I can remember the doctor, I was there being a good dad, and he sort of peeled the wound open a bit and started injecting a bit of stuff in before he put the stitches in, and I was thinking, "Oh man, am I gonna..." I nearly started to faint, but that was pretty tough. But there was bits of meat hanging out and stuff, and it wasn't very pretty, and he was washing it out, so that was probably one of the worst accidents I've seen, but I've been very lucky myself. Music, we sort of just played. The Beach Boys were around, the Beatles were around, lots of different music. I know if you left, a lot of the cars with the radios were just terrible. You'd get a couple of miles out of town and your radio wouldn't work, so a lot of us would have a portable record player in the car, and it would either be a wind-up or a battery, so someone would sit in the back seat with their record player, and the records would be had it after a few trips, but everyone would start singing along, and it was a lot of fun to get to the beach and have your favourite song. So, favourite surf trip, I had a few, but I can remember Murray Jack, Paddy Kelly, me and Max Atkins did I think it was late 66, 67, we did a trip right around the North Island in New Zealand. We headed off here on I think it was Christmas Day afternoon, and we shot down to Raglan, and we probably surfed Raglan on Boxing Day, and you had to, the road didn't go down to where it does now at Manu Bay. You had to jump the fence and walk down the paddock. The surf was probably 1500 high to 5 foot maybe, and it was damn good surf. So I think Max Atkins got one ride and fell off, and his board got dinged, and he stopped surfing. But he I probably fell off a couple of times, but he was saved the boards from being washed over the rocks, so it was handy to hand someone there. So that was our trip, and we went right down the west coast and surfed in quite a few places. Stayed in Wellington, looked at Lyell Bay, but the surf was just huge and massive, so we didn't surf there. And then we came up the other coast, Gisborne, Napier, Hicks Bay, all around there. Bit of the Coromandel, and that, I think it took us, I can't remember, nearly 2 weeks, a week and a half we're away, and we had a lot of fun. Met lots of surfers and had a lot of waves, so it was a real good trip. Favourite beach? I've surfed it based on Whangarei. We're pretty lucky. We Sandy Bay's only a bit over half an hour. Partow's not much further. Ocean Beach is that. Got Hora Bar. My favourite beach is probably Sandy Bay. Know most of the guys out there, and it's like surfing with family. You go out there and there's always 2 or 3 guys that you know. We had a batch at Partow for a number of years, and the kids would go surfing out there. You go surfing 4 times a day, and that Partow bar when it's working is just fantastic. we'd got off and shoot up to the Horahora Bar. It's a bit of a walk or a paddle down the river, but you usually come home with some pippies or pawas or mussels, and it made the trip worthwhile. And I remember taking one of our friends down to the Horahora Bar, and it wasn't a big wave, it was probably only a bit of a metre, but where it breaks it's very, very shallow. And old Paul took off on his first wave and didn't quite get it right, fell off and head-butted the sand, and he bounced up and he had blood coming out of his nose and face a bit, but luckily it wasn't too bad, and we managed to stay there for a few hours. But very shallow takeoff in places, but it's a great little ride. Funniest stories of early surfing, I don't know if I told that, but I can remember sitting in the lights in Whangarei, and my Morris Minor again, and Tui Wordley was that stage, he was driving a lime truck. Anyway, my Morris Minor's here, here's this big truck here, and I think it was cheeky Max Atkins yelled out to him, "Hey Tui, we'll give you a drag." So I'm revving my Morris Minor, and the lights change and the truck just beats me by a mile, so I wasn't impressed with that car at all. One of the funniest things I've seen was a few years ago. I think we had the Thompson boys and the Haag boys, a lot of Onarahi young surfers. They were very young. We're at Sandy Bay, very, very small wave, but just rideable. And I can remember it was Alan Dodge took off in a wave, and my son was behind him, Jamie, and Jamie pushed Dodge off, and the surfboard popped up, and he grabbed it under his arm, and so he was surfing along, zigzagging along, carrying the board under his arm, and everyone was just cracking up. But you see lots of funny things, and they're hard to remember, and you probably remember them after we've turned the video off. But I can remember surfing with my daughter at Sandy Bay, and Dave Meredith, it was pretty big, very big wave, much bigger, it doesn't handle it, and Dave came up to my daughter, and she was only about 16, nice young schoolgirl, and he said, "Christy, you've really got balls to be out there surfing in those conditions." And we were all laughing, but Christy didn't think it was very funny, but it was funny at the time. Talking about surf accidents, I just remembered that I was surfing, we got out to Sandy Bay early one morning, and the forecast, just a few years ago, the forecast had no swell virtually at all. But when we got out there, it was a good 8 feet, very big, but it was a clean wave. So I think it was like, it must have been a storm way up in the Pacific, and it had come for miles. So out we go, and unfortunately I didn't clip the back of my wetsuit up very good. I'd done the zip up, but I hadn't done the little tag that pulls across. And I got a few waves, and then I was paddling out and duck dived under a wave, and the wave just filled my wetsuit up with water. So I was like the Michelin band. And if I didn't have a wetsuit, I probably would have drowned, because my wetsuit was twice the size that it should have been. But it was a good lesson for me, because I make sure when I go in for a surf, I really do my wetsuit up properly. I'm pretty lucky that unfortunately our son died about 12 years ago, but I had a lot of surfing with our son and my daughter, and it's just great to get out with them. I've been lucky enough with our oldest grandson. He's not surfing now, but I've taken him surfing lots of times, so just utter joy getting out there and watching your oldest grandson get a neat wave. We've got a little club at Waipu called Bream Bay Sliders, and I think there was only a couple in the juniors one year, and he managed to win that, and that was great. But he's not surfing now, but he should be, because he could be very good. I've got 4 other grandchildren. None of them are really taken up surfing at this stage, but I think the youngest one, I think she'll be a starter, so she's a daredevil, so I'll have to get her out in the wave. They're all pretty keen, but we'll see what happens with that. I'm getting out of breath. Yeah, that's probably about it. Yeah. I'm probably very fortunate that I've got a lovely wife that will let me go surfing and doesn't grizzle about it, so I'm very, very lucky that way. So cheers. Thank you. Just wanted to add a little bit. A few years ago I was surfing with my children at Sandy Bay, and it was a foggy morning, good surf, and I went down the beach and I was about 10 yards behind my daughter Christy, and I heard her scream, "Dad, Dad, there's a leg over here," and went through the fog. Sure enough, there's a false leg, and it's an architect from Auckland that lives at Sandy Bay, and he comes down the hill and he takes his leg off from his knee down and goes surfing. He's a brilliant surfer, and Christy, just walking along in the fog, she thought there'd been a shark attack or something, and she finds this leg on the beach, but now he's got on it, "Please leave out surfing," so that was one of the funnier things that we'd seen. Also remember that when the Tatahi Surf Club had a reunion probably 15 years ago, and we had a bit of a competition, and it was pretty rough, and I remember standing up on this neat wave and really going along, getting a good ride, and something got tangled up in my leg rope. I've never had it before, because you're surfing along and you just come to a complete stop, and wasn't until the next day that they realised that someone had committed suicide, and they were probably in the water, and that's all I can think, that I must have got my leg rope tangled around this guy's body somewhere, and it probably cost me the competition, but it's a pretty weird feeling, but I must have got tangled around some part of his body, so that wasn't too much fun, but after it. But one of the scarier things too, in the 60s, I was out surfing at Sandy Bay, and one of the guys actually lost his life. His girlfriend was screaming and that because his board got washed up, and no leg ropes in those days, and tragically we don't know what happened. He just disappeared, and it was a bit of a weird feeling being out there trying to look for the body. Very sad moment, but yeah, what can you do? We don't know what happened. No one saw him get hit by his board or whatever, so was sad for his family and his brother, and that was very sad. But a lot of the things that have been so joyful, so that's, yeah. Cheers, mate.